Golden Hour. I am Golden Duffy, your host. Today it's all me, and we're talking about one of my favorite subjects on the planet, parenting, creating a peaceful home. It's been something that over the last almost 31 years of my life, I have dedicated figuring this parenting thing out and what works, what doesn't work. I've, processed, I've healed myself, I've been triggered, and I have 4 daughters. So they have taught me more than probably anybody on the planet has taught me about myself and what I need to heal. So that's the biggest thing when it comes to our parenting journey, is to have that realization that your kids are not doing stuff to tick you off. They really aren't. They are not doing, if you are taking what your children are doing personally, we got to start there, because that's victimhood, right? That's blame and victimhood. And if you've been following my show for any amount of time, you know it doesn't fly. The victimhood stuff doesn't fly, because it's not how we take our power back. It's not how we live in our power. We have to become the most powerful creators in every area of our life. And when it comes to your home, and I know I have felt this way for many years, throughout my journey here. If you don't feel like you have any control over your home because there's too many people in it and they all have their own personalities and you've got some that are just ruining it, if you got that going on, I'm going to help you today. This conversation is really going to help you today to understand the mechanisms of emotion, what these kids are going through, and how you can help them to gain control over their own emotional field. So we've kind of had it across the gamut. So I was a very young mom. I started having children when I was 19. I turned 20 2 weeks later. My husband and I had already been together for 7 years. So to say we were ready to have children, not sure about that, but you do get ready. When you do get pregnant, you do get ready, right? And then when she was 7 months old, I got pregnant again with my second. Luckily, we were married already after that. We had just gotten married, and I found I was pregnant a week later with our second child. So that was a lot. I wasn't even 21 yet and already on my way to having 2 children. So it was an intense way to start our family life. And because of that, there was a lot of struggle, there was a lot of stress, there was a lot of financial issues. There was a lot going on that called us to new places to expand and grow, but also did not make us the best parents always, But I was set out to figure this out in a way where I could break generational cycles, where I could raise children and I could be in a home that was peaceful and loving. And my husband, the same thing. Now, interestingly, we both didn't grow up in these peaceful homes. So my husband's parents were divorced when he was 13, and my parents stayed together, but there was a lot going on in my house that just did not promote peace. It did not feel like a sanctuary. It did not feel like a safe place. It felt like a place that I wanted to escape from a lot. So I didn't want that. We didn't want that for our family. So a lot of times what happens as we're growing up and these contrasts happens, and challenges happen and traumas happen, they make you make a decision about how you want to live your life moving forward and what you want to promote in your own family. So it can be a really good thing when we live through these contrasts to say, no more. Now, why does that work for some people and not for other? I'm not sure. I'm not sure why some people are just set out to break generational cycles and say, I'm not going to live that way. Some people go the extreme. And my husband and I have definitely struggled with this, where we've kind of overgiven to our kids, and I don't want to say overloved, because I don't think you can overlove children, but we loved from a place of lack. We loved from what we didn't get. So there was a lot of sometimes that overzealous, too much, giving too much, where our family got out of balance. So these are all things that we've processed through over the last couple of years. And we've had 4 amazing girls, women now, young women, who have really shown us the way, really shown us. And we have a grandbaby who is, I'll call her baby forever. She's 5, gonna soon be 6. So, in watching my daughter parent her and the cycles that she's shifting with her and changing with her, it's just this, I'm not going to say perfection, but it's this process of correction. We're just doing our best. We're learning how to do our best. We're learning and growing with these little beings. And, if you can really be cautious about some of the things I'm going to talk about right now, and not come from these places where you shut communication down, where you're not able to see on the same page all the time. If you would just open your mind to this conversation, because I'm going to go against a lot of the things. And I have to say, for a long time, I wrote a parenting book, geez, like 12 years ago, 13 years ago. I wrote a parenting book, never published it. I actually have written 3 parenting books, only one of them got published. And I figured out why, because I wasn't so confident in my parenting styles, because these kids are always changing and they're always showing me something different. And I haven't always felt like I was being successful at it. So it took me a while to really gain my footing in my voice about this and to feel confident in what I'm doing. And universal law of attraction is a big piece of this. So I'm going to touch on that throughout this conversation so you can understand how to energetically parent instead of disciplinarian parent. We've been taught to be disciplinarians. We've been taught to be the ones who are dominating our families, that we're, the heads of the household and what we say goes, and, all the things that we grew up with because I said so. Oh my goodness. That was one that I needed to break, was because I said so. And, there is a philosophy out there that we shouldn't be explaining ourselves to our kids. And I would really question that, because these are people. And as much as we want to say there are people that we gave birth to them, so they should have to listen to us, the truth is they are forming and growing. They are little souls that came into this world. They are forming and growing and expanding. And one day they're going to expand past us. They're going to be these people that are going to hopefully stand on their own 2 feet and be their own people. And we're not going to have much say over who they are. So you got to keep that in mind, because they're only ours for a while. And as much as we want to create the best little people and the best little beings, it's not up to you. What your kids turn out to be is not necessarily a reflection on you. It's their soul's path here. I mean, I know a lot of kids who turned out to be drug addicts or committed suicide, and mothers and fathers who had a hard time forgiving themselves for what happened to their children. And it's like, we're doing the best we can with the consciousness that we have right now. So with that said, I would say, in regard to your own parents, they did the best they could with what they knew, with what they were conscious of what they were taught to do with you. So there may be some forgiveness that you need to do with your own parents. I know for me, it's been a journey of forgiveness for my own parents, and of not feeling resentful or blaming that, our family didn't turn out to be this peaceful, joyful experience. It's okay. It's okay. I forgive. So maybe you need to do a little forgiving of your own parents, because if you shadow that situation with your own kids, that's hard on the family. That's really hard on the family. All right. So disciplinarian parenting is power struggles and domination. So anytime you're in a power struggle with your kids, you're in a place of being a disciplinarian. You're trying to dominate another person to get them to do what you want to do. Now, some kids will fall in line. I have a couple of people pleasers who would just do what we said, not question it, never talk back, that sort of a thing. It's good and it's bad, because what happens is they end up growing up to be people pleasers and they never really know what they want. It's hard for them to have their own voice and to really know what their own preferences are. So you want to start to get your kids to, go inside, find their guidance, find what they like, find what they prefer. I know it takes time, and many of us are very busy and don't have the time to consult with our kids. I get that. But if you can do it at a time when it's not so crazy, when you're not so busy, and hopefully you haven't jam-packed your life. I've seen a lot of this, families that jam-pack their lives. They're always running from thing to thing, from sports to sports, and they never really spend time together as a family. Now, some of that is good. The discipline of sports, the connection, the community of sports is great. It gives them a future. That's all good. I'm not judging that piece of it. But we all need downtime. We all need time as a family to connect and to get to know one another. Like, do you really know your kids? I remember years ago, I was coaching this woman about her 11-year-old daughter, and she was just saying how combative she is and how, she would never do what she wanted her to do, and she was always coming up against her. And I asked her if she ever asked the girl how she felt, like what she was feeling or what she was going through, instead of feeling like she's the enemy and I have to fight with her all the time. Can you break through? Can you start a conversation that allows these kids to open up and be a little vulnerable and get in touch with their feelings? Because this is the thing. If you are in this old school way of parenting, it doesn't work anymore. It absolutely doesn't work anymore for a lot of kids. For some kids, it may still work. For kids who come into this world, let's see, my second daughter, I read this book about strong-willed child, like those strong-willed babies. I always feel like we're going to get one of those, right? When you have a strong-willed child, they have their own will coming in. And now with social media and the internet and the access that these kids have, they're just a little more hip to life. So they're not going to necessarily only listen to you. They're listening to a lot of people, a lot of time, like their friends, TikTok, we call it TikTok spirituality. They all have access to them all the time. So your kids know a lot more than you did, or that, even older kids know. They've come into this world at a different place, in a different generation of, computers, of internet, of access. Anytime you are at a battle with your kids, a power struggle, pay attention to what you're fighting for when you're fighting for your kids. If you're just fighting to be right, or you're just fighting to gain some sort of control, or you're just fighting to keep them safe, think about that, okay? In law of attraction, anytime we are fighting something, we are first of all in resistance to it. So we slow the energy way down. And second of all, we're fighting with our kids. What kind of energy is that? What are we telling them about life, about relationships? Remember, you're like we are, and their siblings are one of the first relationships that help them to start figuring out how to be in relationships, how to be social, how to get along with people, how to compromise, how to, right, be compassionate. They're learning all of that stuff by watching you. And you and their relationship is the most important relationship to formulating that voice inside their head. That I like to call it the committee, that self-critical committee in their head. You're the one that's helping formulate that. So keep that in mind. Think about that for a second in your own life, in your own mind. That self-critical voice in your head, is it your mother or your father? Maybe. Yeah. So think about that, because the more critical you are of your child, the harder life is going to be on them, because they're going to have that self-critical voice in their head all the time. So be really, really mindful of that. When you're putting them down, when you're being critical, when you're looking at what's wrong with them, that they're doing, like if you're the kind of mom, and I was like this, and I bite my tongue now. I really do. I really am very cautious with the words that I use with my kids. My younger ones that live with us are 19 and 21. I'm very cautious. I'm not perfect, but I am cautious. So one of the things that I noticed was, as a mother, and this is also as an untrained mind, because think about what mind training does for you. If you have an untrained mind, you will usually be looking for things that make you feel dissatisfaction. So you will look at your child, and I have seen moms do this even recently, and you will look them head to toe, and you'll look for what's wrong, and you'll point it out. I don't know why that is. Maybe because it's the way that we grew up. Maybe that is a generational cycle that we need to break. But if you're doing this, remember, you are planting seeds for that self-critical committee. So do yourself a favor, because all that's going to do is shred that child's self-confidence, self-esteem, or if it doesn't do that, it's just going to make them not like you even more. It's just going to create more dissension, more tension in your house, and more of a feeling of just not being loved, not feeling accepted, not feeling, it's like all these things and it will make them worse. It will make them rebel even more. The more you say, the more they're going to rebel. I promise you, because that's just the way of it. That's just the way of it. Think about it when you were a kid, right? All right. This is the old school way of parenting. Kids are not allowed to have emotions. We were sent to our room, right? I remember being sent to my room many times when I was angry, when I was, raging, when I was upset, when I really needed to get my feelings out. I was sent to my room and punished. We were always told to stop crying. Stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. That was like constant crying. And now we live in a society of people. I work with a lot of people on like trauma and energy releasing and all of that stuff. We live in a society of people that are ashamed to cry, that get mad at themselves when they cry. And crying is a normal emotion that releases negative energy out of our body, that actually promotes healing. So if you've been fighting crying, if you don't cry, if you shut yourself down and you never cry, you are holding those emotions. And when it comes to law of attraction, what ends up happening is you create from those emotions because they're underneath, and you are very easily triggered because they're right there, because you haven't dealt with them, because you haven't actually gotten them out of your body. Your kids will help you to heal. They will show you where your triggers are and what you need to do to break generational cycles. They are our greatest teachers, especially the little rascals, the strong-willed ones, the ones that come in with their own agenda, and you just have to figure out how to manage with that and how to. I think for us in our house, it's been like, how can we do this to the best of our ability? How can we communicate? How can we be there for our kids? How can we be compassionate? How can we listen when they need us to listen? Because if not, and there's one unhappy person in the bunch, and we have a few of them in our family who have tended to have really intense emotions and have tended to had some emotional challenges, we'll say, had some things good that they've gone through that have been really emotionally disruptive to the family. Because, if one person is upset and raging, it affects everybody there, everybody in the room, right? Someone has a trauma response, the entire family is going to have some sort of response to that. I have one child that runs. She runs out of the house when anybody's having issues. When anybody's having an emotional, field day, she's out, she checks out. And she's been that way her whole life. She doesn't really like dealing with emotions. She hasn't had a lot of girlfriends because she just doesn't want to deal with that whole emotional field. She's definitely more of our male. She comes from that more male energy. And then we have a couple that are just really in touch with those emotions, or they feel their emotions deeper. And that was probably one of the biggest realizations that I had when one of my daughters was really struggling as a teenager, and we were going at it all the time. And I remember a doctor telling me, "Do you know your daughter is depressed?" And I was like, "Depressed? No, she's a jerk," right? Like, she's just a jerk all the time. And the doctor said to me, "No, anger can actually be depression. It can actually be a mask for depression." So in realizing that shifted our relationship, because I started to have some more compassion for her. And I have some tips for you on how to do that. So in breaking generational cycles, we have to look at the things that we grew up with, the things that were not okay, the things that brought us to a place of maybe burying our emotions. And we have to start working there. We have to start working on ourselves. So what do you need to do to break generational cycles? Now, this is just a short list of some of the things that I have done that have really worked tremendously in our family, and my husband as well. And I'm very fortunate to have a husband who is incredibly supportive, and he's a total girl dad. Like, he can just handle these girls' emotions, and he's very available when at times I feel as though I'm not. And that comes from the childhood that I grew up in, where I didn't have emotionally available parents. So, in recognizing that, we're not always going to be emotionally available. Sometimes we've had enough. I remember a friend of mine a long time ago, and I'm going to cover all the different stages of childhood, since I've been through all of them. But I remember a friend of mine was saying how, he would be yelling at his kid in the grocery store, and people would be looking at him. And I really never did that. I really am not into the public embarrassment or shaming of my children. Like, I would wait till we got to the car. You kind of grit your teeth and you talk through your teeth. but he would say, yeah, you didn't see the last 10 things this kid did to make me mad, right? So most of us that are parents, if we see that kind of stuff going on in public, we get it. But I would implore you not to do it publicly. Like shaming your child in public is, I know it may feel good at the time to kind of express your emotions, but it does not make for a very good relationship, and it doesn't make for a very good little being if they are embarrassed and ashamed and, publicly humiliated. I mean, would you want to be publicly humiliated? No. All right, so here are just a few things. Meditate. Oh my goodness, you got to meditate. Meditation was the A number, and I know I've said this a million times, so I'll say it again. And I'm also going to let you know we have a new M21 that just started today. We are on Facebook. It's the M21 Revolution on Facebook. We just started today. It's a donation-based challenge. If you ask to come into the group, we'll approve you. We asked for a $50 donation. It's a 21-day challenge. We have had some people pay 25. We've had, if you, whatever you can do for the donation is great because it's just the exchange of energy. This will teach you how to meditate, and it will get you on a really good, committed meditation path. Meditation is number one, and I'm going to tell you why. All right. Meditation, first of all, it's going to give you some space. Usually when we're triggered by our kids or when we're, yelling at our kids, it's because we have momentum of an emotion or a negative energy path in the household, right? Or within ourselves. Like something ticked us off in the morning. We got dialed into that radio station, and now our child is giving us even more reasons to be mad at them or upset. So the M21 Revolution group on Facebook will teach you how to meditate, and it will give you a committed practice. I also did this morning today was our first day, August 1st. There are hundreds of challenges in there though. So there's tons of guided meditations and information that you could just go on and check out for free. You could do your own challenge if you want to, but the first meditation that I gave out was about shifting your frequency, and it's about releasing energy. So we're going to start out clearing the path. We're going to clear all those negative energies out. And we had some people that cried, and we had some people that thought it was amazing. And so it was an amazing kickoff to our first day. We're also doing a live video later this afternoon. Jess Gumkowski is my partner in that, and she is absolutely amazing. All right, journal and deal and heal your emotions. So journaling is a great way to get to the bottom of your emotions, to figure out why you feel the way you do. If you've got a lot of power and control and struggle with that, you just want to have control, that was a big one for me. I used to get really upset when my kids wouldn't listen to me, when I felt like I didn't have any control. And a big piece of that was because I didn't have a career. My kids were my career. So I didn't have a purpose outside of the house. Now, I'm not going to say that I regret that, but what I will say, if you're a stay-at-home mom, find something. Find something you can create with, find something that expresses your genius, find something that makes you feel like you really matter, because you can get very lost in motherhood, which I absolutely did. And there were a lot of days when I felt purposeless. And silly as that is, we don't put a lot of regard on the stay-at-home moms, even though they have the hardest job in the world. And I would never change it because my girls have always had me here. We've got a pretty tight, connected family because of that. But, in that same respect, I could have been creating and probably been a little more excited and a little bit more passionate about life if I had started this kind of stuff earlier. All right, stop the power struggles. So the minute you feel like you're in some sort of power struggle or control, just take a break. You can take a break. You're allowed to take a break. You're allowed to take a time out for yourself and just either go in the bathroom or go for a walk or lock yourself in your room, but just take a break. Because what happens when we're extremely triggered and frustrated and we start yelling, we say a lot of things we don't mean. And remember, that self-critical voice becomes our child's. So we don't want to say those things that hurt. We don't want to, lose our minds, because anytime I yelled and got out of control with my emotions, there was guilt, right? That mom guilt. I'm screwing these kids up. I'm not doing a good job, and then that self-critical voice takes over for me and I'm beating myself up. That's not helpful to anyone. And those are not frequencies energies or vibrations that you want living within your home. Learn effective communication. So this is one that we're still working on. I think you could probably work on that forever with your kids, but just having effective communication where we talk about our feelings, we talk about what our needs are. I remember a really long time ago, my little one was having trouble getting on the bus, and like the mornings were super stressful, and I was waking her up, and of course my energy was off, right? Like, because I'm thinking about waking her up and how she doesn't get up in time and how we're always rushing. And so if you're coming at the day in that energy, you're already in. So, oh, I forgot to plug my. All right, we're okay. We're okay. We're gonna be fine. Put angels on it. Okay, I forgot to plug in my internet, but we're on wireless. So angels, just keep us on wireless. So I remember talking to her, and I remember sitting down and going, you know what? This isn't working. Like, I don't want to start my day out like this. This is a terrible way for you to start your day, for me to start my day, to be stressed out. What can we do? So anytime you involve them in decision making, and goes against old school parenting completely, but anytime you can get them involved in this isn't working and what can we do to fix it, they're going to feel a part of it, and they're going to be much more likely to be a part of it. My daughter, actually, with my granddaughter, just created a chart for sleeping in her own bed. So here's something my daughter did very different than what I did. My mom was extremely against sleeping with children, like so against it, to the point where if I had nightmares, I had a lot of nightmares as a small child. I would go into her room, I'd come down the stairs, I'd go into her room, and she would hold me for a second, and then she would bring me back upstairs and put me back in my bed. Because of that, I did the same thing with my kids. I might have consoled them for a few more minutes, but I did pretty much the same thing because it was literally hammered into my head. You don't sleep with your kids. Also, I know I don't sleep well when the children are in bed with me. So I know I'm not really going to have a good sleep. So there was that. I had 4 kids. I needed sleep. So I always brought them back. My daughter decided that that was not okay, and that she was going to be okay with sleeping with her daughter, that she is a single mom. So they've been sleeping together, and she's, going on 5. And my daughter really wanted her to start sleeping in her own bed. So they created a chart together, and they have a little rewards on the chart. So for the last, I think it's been 10 days or something, she's been sleeping in her own bed with her chart. So she got her involved. She got her excited about it. So these are little things that you can do to get your kids excited about it. And it's effective communication because you're bringing them into the picture and you're asking them their opinions. This helps them to tune into their inner voice and their inner brilliance. If you're always telling them what to do, you are not helping them to connect with their guidance. These kids all have guidance, and we want to connect them to their guidance so that when we're not there, they can hear their own guidance and they won't just listen to everybody else. We don't want them listening to everybody else. We don't want them taking the guidance of their peers. We want them to have their own inner guidance. And that's why it's so important to not just tell your kids what to do, but to ask them what they think. It's also important for people pleasing. We know a lot of people who are people pleasers. Maybe you are one. Maybe you're reformed like I am. If, having people, bringing up little people that are people pleasers is a really good way for them to not live joy, to not live happiness, and to always be doing for other people. This is a programming that we all grew up with, that if we really want to be whole and fulfilled and really know who we are, we have to stop the people pleasing and we have to start using our inner guidance. Stop yelling. If you can stop yelling, stop yelling. Breathe, learn breathing techniques. Breath is one of the most important things we can do to settle our nervous systems. When we're really upset and we're yelling, a couple things happen. One is nobody's listening. It's not a teaching moment. We always say that. When 2 people are yelling, no one gets heard. No one gets heard. Nothing happens. Nothing constructive happens. Something happens, but nothing constructive happens. 2, nobody wants to be yelled at. I mean, that's not a peaceful environment in your home if people are yelling and screaming at each other. It's just not peaceful. It's not peaceful. And it doesn't allow us to communicate, really. It shuts communication down. Stop exhibiting out of control emotions. So if you have out of control emotions, your children are going to have out of control emotions, or they're going to shut their emotions down because yours are too much. They're too extreme. So learn how to start gaining control of your emotions. I have some programs coming up. We have my husband and I are actually teaming up, and we're going to have some stuff to share really soon on, creating a life that is filled with peace and joy. So I'm going to share that really soon. We got a 3-day challenge coming up that's really going to set you on the path. And then we've got a virtual event coming up. We have a lot of things coming up to help you with these things. But as far as your emotions go, you got to get in touch with them. You got to start paying attention to them. You got to stop, drinking and shopping and scrolling social media and ignoring how you really feel. Getting in touch with our feelings is the greatest way to our healings. Here's a really good one. And this was a realization that I had when my older kids were growing up. And luckily, I started to heal this within me, but stop parenting as if your kids are you. So this is something that I did with my older girls where I didn't trust them. And it wasn't because they didn't give me reasons not to trust them. It was because I thought they were doing what I did. Yeah. I was no angel. So if you're doing that and you're not trusting them, but they haven't given you a reason not to trust them, then what you're basically doing is you're breaking the relationship of trust before it's even broken. So they will do things that are risky because they're like, she doesn't trust me anyway, so I might as well. So be aware of that. Give your kids a chance. Trust them. And I used to, and I still say this, I trust you. When you say I trust you, I remember I had this situation with my parents. I was probably 13 years old, and I started dating this guy, and they found out that he was like 17. And I didn't know he was 17. He lied to me and told me he was like 15. So they refused. They told me that I wasn't allowed to be with him, and that if he showed up, okay, I was at a bowling alley. This is so embarrassing. I was at a bowling alley, and they said if he showed up to that bowling alley, that I needed to call them, and they were going to come and get me, and that they trusted me. They trusted that I would do the right thing. And do you want to know what? He came to the bowling alley, and I called them because they said that. I was like, they trust me. I can't break their trust. Like, that was important. So if you, bolster them up with some trust. If you let them know, I trust you. We have open communication. We have love here. We have compassion for one another. Your communication is going to be a lot better. Stop feeling like they are doing things to make you mad. They're not. That's that whole taking things personally thing that destroys relationships, because then you end up getting resentful and everything they do just makes you mad. And when you're just in a losing battle with that, because kids are always going to do stuff that we don't want them to do. And they're going to leave messes, and they're going to do things that are going to drive us crazy. And if we take it to that next level of taking things personally, it's going to be even worse. It's going to be even worse. So I had a moment the other day. It was a Sunday morning, and I got up, and my husband and I had gone out for a date night the night before, and we got up early because we wanted to go to the beach super early and go for an ocean swim, which we've been doing lately, which is incredible. It's like alchemy at its finest. When you go dive in the ocean, you just cleanse your body, and it's so life-giving. So the last couple of weekends, we've been getting up and going out and swimming super early in the morning. So I got up early, and I went down to the kitchen, and there was a sink full of dishes. Now I have 2 older children that should definitely be doing their own dishes by now. For sure, right? Yeah, for sure. But sometimes they don't. And I looked at the sink full of dishes, and I know a lot of moms who won't do it. They'll just leave it there for days and days and days just to prove a point. And to me, that is such a waste of energy. And every time you look at that sink, it's like it's a power struggle, and it makes you mad, and it just continues this negative frequency in your home. So I just got into it, and I started washing the dishes. And as I'm washing the dishes, I'm thinking to myself, wow, in the past, I would have ruined this whole morning over this. I would have gotten mad. I would have yelled at people. I would have gotten resentful. I would have dragged my husband into it. We might have gotten into a fight with somebody over it. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like, I'm super proud of myself, not for washing my kids' dishes, but for doing it from a place of gratitude and love. You know what I thought as I was washing those dishes? I've got a couple who have had some issues with eating, and I thought, wow, it's so great that they're cooking healthy food. It's so great that they're eating. I love it. I love it. So I went straight into gratitude. And because of that, I had an incredible Sunday, was in a good mood all day. Nothing bothered me. I didn't carry it with me. I didn't carry the resentment with me. I didn't even say anything. They don't even know. They don't even know, right? Because they don't remember that they leave dishes. So in that capacity, now, if you have little kids and you're trying to get them to be responsible and you're trying to get them, to do their things and do their dishes and things, I get that. I get that. Mine are older, so I feel like I can let go a little bit, but I would highly recommend the charting system. When our kids were little, we actually, I was seeing this psychologist, and we had a charting system. And so we wrote down all their things that we wanted them to do every day. And if this is the hard part, if they didn't do it, you circled it and then you minused it at the end of the week. But the hard part is not the circling. The hard part is not saying anything. They know. So then at the end of the week, you tally up their scores and they'll either get things or they won't based on what they did that week. And it also equated to money. That was part of their allowance. So that was really a very effective system that worked really well for us. But, the whole talking and trying to get them to do things and all that stuff. One of the major shifts, I think, in my mothering experience was not needing them to do things, not feeling resentful when they didn't do things for me, and getting rid of the idea that I'm the only one. I'm the martyr. I'm the only one that can cook dinner. I'm the only one that can put the garbage out. I'm the only one who can do the dishes. I let go of that. So now I get surprises. Sometimes people do the garbage and it's so great. And I'm like, yay. People don't really make dinner. Every once in a while, my husband will make dinner. But for the most part, it's the energy of it. It's how I feel about it. It's how you feel about it. It's how you feel about your kids, how you feel about your spouse, how you feel about your home. That is what is going to set you up for the frequency. That is law of attraction. That is universal law. What you send out is what you get back. So think about the energy that you're sending to your kids when they're not with you, when they are with you, when anytime, what energy are you sending to them? All right. So learn to breathe before you speak. Yes, learn to breathe, learn to count. There was that whole count to 10 thing, very profound. The count to 10 thing doesn't work if you're already super angry. Doesn't really work. I tried it. You got to breathe, maybe go out in nature, take a break, just get yourself back into a state of control. Learn to process before you punish. I can't tell you how many times I got grounded as a kid and it never stuck. It never stuck because, the punishment usually didn't fit the crime. You're grounded for 2 months. You can't go out. And then by the end of the week, we weren't punished anymore. Not really a good lesson. So make sure the punishment fits the crime. Make sure it's not out of control. And make sure that you process and you really consider what this kid is going through or what happened before you decide what kind of punishment you're going to give. I'm not a big punisher. I don't really like punishing. I would rather come to new awarenesses together and to get them to realize what they did wrong and how they can right it than like throwing down the hammer. And people may very much disagree with me on that. Silence is better than being hurtful, way better. One thing I found recently, because sometimes I'm not helpful, like sometimes my kids are going through stuff and I try to give them advice. I'm an over-advisor trying to reform. Because I do this for a living, it's really hard not to help people shift in the moment. But what I've learned is that's very masculine energy when you're trying to help people and give them advice all the time. Plus, they may not be ready for it. And often when you're trying to give someone advice, it feels like an attack if they're not ready for it. If they're not ready to take personal responsibility, it may feel like an attack. So I'm starting to be a little bit quieter. And sometimes that gets misconstrued that I'm giving a silent treatment. So I grew up, well, let's not even get into that. don't give your kids silent treatments and don't hold grudges, because when you do that, you create huge rifts in your relationship, and then they can't trust the relationship. They can't trust that you're going to be there for them when they're going through tough stuff. They can't trust that they can come to you with things that are really hard in nature that you may be upset about. They can't trust that. And if they can't trust your relationship, whose relationship are they trusting? Are they just trusting their peers who are probably going to give them really bad advice and maybe get them into even more trouble? So you really want to create a feeling of trust by not flipping out, by not flying off the handle every time they do something that's wrong, but actually getting into more of a compassionate place where you can actually speak. Focus on what is good about them. Create a gratitude list. I remember reading some parenting books, and I can't remember which parenting book it is, but it was one that was super effective. I actually took a parenting course. Oh, come on back. Okay. When my younger kids were they were in elementary going into middle school, I took a parenting course. Yeah, you think I'm already like what? I don't know. I was already like 15, 16 years into the game, but I was always trying to perfect the game. I took a parenting course a few times because I was like, I got to figure this out. I got to figure out how to do this better. I got to figure out how to have more peace in my home. I was so interested in doing this well. And maybe because I didn't have a career, I put my entire self into this. So maybe that was a good thing. It definitely was a good thing. But I remember them saying, ignore the bad stuff, praise the good stuff. And I was like, what? Like, how do you even do that? But I realized in studying law of attraction that when we look at the bad stuff, when we're only noticing what they're doing that is wrong, we are tuning into that frequency over and over again. And then that's all they're going to give us, right? When we complain, when we, just notice what they're doing wrong. And when we only tell them what they're doing wrong and we never talk about when they do good. It's like when somebody does the dishes, but they do a really cruddy job at it. And you're like, hey, you didn't even really wash the dishes. They're still dirty, right? That makes people not want to do the dishes. I'll tell you that. So it's noticing what they're doing good. Or if they make their bed and they don't do a good job. Actually, this happened to me recently. My husband made the bed and our comforter is like flowers and it was sideways. And I made a comment, shouldn't have. He hasn't made the bed since. So, we got to praise the good stuff. The act of making the bed should have been good enough, right? The act of what they're doing should be good. So look for the good stuff. That doesn't mean that we're like, giving them a trophy when they lose a soccer game. That's not what I'm talking about. It means we start to notice, we start to praise them for what they're doing well. If a kid comes home with a C, what do you do with that? Do you get upset with them? Or do you sit down with them and say, all right, well, are you happy with this grade? Are you happy with this grade? Do you think you did your best? Start asking these questions because it's going to help them start taking personal responsibility. We had a daughter who wanted to drop out of high school. In her junior year, she was failing miserably, and we were having a lot of challenges with her at that point, with drinking and staying out and fighting with us all the time. And I remember the day that I sat her down and I said, sweetheart, I can't do this for you. I want this for you, but I can't want it more than you do. And I explained to her what it means to have a high school diploma and what it would mean if she didn't have a high school diploma and what the direction of her life was going to do if she quit school when she was 16 years old. And we talked very honestly. And the next year she came back and got high honors, and she did it on her own. And she did it because she took personal responsibility, because I gave it back to her, because I didn't insist that she do this stuff for me. I let her see that she needed to do it for herself. That was a total shift in our relationship. Being critical all the time sets up that critical committee. I want to say that again. Think about the words that are coming out of your mouth. And think about the words in respect that your words are your wand. Are you creating magic with those words, or are you creating a self-critical, self-defamating thing for your child, right? What are you doing for your family? I used to think about this all the time. Like, I remember my grandfather would come to visit. Oh, my grandfather was like, next to my husband, he was the love of my life. and he would come to visit all the time. And I remember what a stellar mom I was when he was in town, because he would stay with us for like a month at a time. And I remember him saying to me once, we visited them, my grandparents in Florida. They're both passed. But I just adored those people. Oh my goodness. And did they adore me? And man, do I adore my granddaughter. Like, I fully realize how much they loved me with how much I love her. So I remember him saying to me, my little ones, we had two that were like 16 months apart. This is before we had the second set, which I had at 31. And I remember my second one was teething really bad, and she was really upset. And it's really easy to get frustrated in those situations because they're just crying and they're in pain and you don't know what to do. And I just remember feeling compassion for her. I felt bad for her that she had these like teeth erupting. And my grandfather said to me, "You are so patient." And I was like, "Oh, probably because you're here." Just, I was a stellar mom in front of people, right? It's like when you get alone. So think about that when you're in your home alone. Think about who could be watching. Think about your guides or your angels or whoever, or your passed away loved ones that may be watching. Maybe that'll help you behave. But honestly, think about what you're doing. Like, get really conscious. I think that's the biggest thing, is when we step into a more conscious way of parenting, we're going to be different parents, because we fully realize and recognize what we're setting our children up for, that it's not just a moment, that these moments really could traumatize, and this energy really could become some sort of a trauma response for them. And it really could create issues I had a lady on talking about this. It was so interesting. Your nervous system. Yeah, I had a lady on, Candace, a couple of shows ago. She was amazing about your nervous system. We were talking about a divorce that she went through and an abusive relationship, and knowing that we have the ability to really set ourselves up for a nervous system that cannot handle emotions. This is why you see people, one person can witness an accident and be totally fine from it. Another person can witness the same accident and be completely, destroyed by it, because that other person may have a traumatic accident in their past that they never dealt with. And that's the issue with not dealing what we need to heal, is that it can be triggered at any time, and it can be triggered to the point of really, really destroying us if we aren't working on our stuff. Like, eventually it's going to come up, so we might as well deal with it as it does. All right, so I want to just dive real quick into the different developmental stages. And these are just a few, but these are some ways that you can deal with the different developmental stages. Okay, toddlers. Okay, here's a realization for toddlers. Toddlers, I won't say what I sometimes call them, but they can be little jerks, right? Okay. So their temper tantrums are because they have no clue or ability to regulate their emotions. So when your toddler has a temper tantrum and then you have a temper tantrum on top of that, you're exhibiting out of control emotions, and you're teaching your toddler that not only is it okay, but then you're going to get really mean when they have emotions, right? The frontal lobe, right? The frontal lobe is the thing that processes our emotions. It is not fully developed until age 25. I know that's concerning. That's why your young adults are jerks. That's why your teenagers are jerks, because they don't know how to process emotions. One of the greatest gifts we can give our kids is to help them how to process, share with them how to process emotions, and have them be okay with their emotions, and have them journal, and have them process, and have them talk, right? Guidance. Keep in mind, I've seen this across the board a lot with my granddaughter, especially when it comes to low blood sugar. They're usually hungry, they need sleep, or something is bothering them, or they are overstimulated. I had a child who would get so overstimulated at school that when she came home from kindergarten, she would completely fall apart. Now, if I took that personally and got really upset with her, we would have a problem. But instead, I realized she held it together all day, and I'm her safe place. I had this realization the other day with my children now, that I am their safe place sometimes, and sometimes they just got to let it out on me. And if I don't take it personally, and I don't have wounds for them to open and, pour salt into, I'm going to be much better at handling that. Doesn't mean doesn't mean I'm a doormat, But what it does mean, if I do get triggered, that it's an invitation for me to heal as well. Adolescents, their hormones be running rampant. They have so many pressures, especially today. Oh my goodness, these children have so many pressures. They are literally on display 24/7 with social media. They have all eyes looking at them all the time, and things are a really big deal to them. They feel things at a deeper level. So if you can help them to realize that the emotions that they're feeling are because they have hormones that are trying to develop and give them processes. If you can get them meditating, good Lord, we'd have such a better world if everybody meditated. If you can get them quieting their mind. I send my kids guided meditations all the time. If you can get them to breathe. I was teaching my daughter the other day. She was having a little emotional meltdown, and I was teaching her. I said, just breathe. Just take a breath, hold it, let it all out of your body. Like let all the air out of your lungs. This is that's part of the alpha meditation. You breathe in and you let your abdomen expand. This tells your nervous system to calm down. It tells your nervous system that you're okay. So teach your kids these breathing techniques. Now, adolescents are going to fight us on everything. So they may not be open to it, but if you did it, you would be showing them if you did it. Well, I had a comment. I'm so sorry I didn't. Ernie. Hello, Ernie. Just got back from Japan. Okay, cool. He's unpacking. All right. Moving forward. Let me just go back to that. Okay. They don't feel good about themselves. When you consider adolescents or teenagers, a lot of times when people are cranky, think about yourself when you're cranky, when you're in a bad mood, when you take things out on people, you don't feel good. And when somebody points it out to you and gets mad at you for it, it just makes it even worse. So we use hugging. You're supposed to hug 8 times a day. I don't know if your kids let you hug them. Even a touch, even a human touch, even a little rub on the back, just something you can do to say, I love you, that it's okay, that you're okay. But when they don't feel good about themselves, giving them more reasons to feel yucky, it's not a great thing to do. And they have more things going on than you know. Find ways to bolster them up instead of expecting them to act older than they are, especially if they have younger siblings. So it's like, instead of saying you should know better, say, how can we navigate this for you? I know your little brother or little sister is annoying. How can I help you with this? Really, really good advice, and to help that sibling relationship to be better if they know that you're there for them, if they know that you understand what they're going through. Teenagers' hormones be bonkers, so many pressures. Here's a few tips really quick that I used. I would lay in their bed and I would think about what they would go through. I would pull out pictures of them when they were their cutest, 2, 3 years old, when they didn't give me a hard time. And I would look at that and I'd go, that's who they are. That's who they are. That tunes you into a frequency with them where you can actually see who they are instead of what they're being. The more strict you are and the more you live in fear for them, the riskier they become. The more control you try to have, the more riskier they become, because they're looking for freedom. They're looking for an escape. So if you can trust, if you can have open communication, and you can not live in fear. Listen, it's hard. I know, as a mom of 4 daughters, goodness, every time they pull out of my driveway, I wrap them in angels. I didn't wait up for them. I stopped waiting up for them a long time ago. And instead, I wrap them in angels, and I trust. I trust that their destiny here is going to be fulfilled and that they're going to be safe. If you don't trust that they're safe, and you live in fear, and you watch the news a lot, and you tune into those frequencies, you are going to put things in their experience that create junk for them, that create nasty stuff for them, that create fears for them, and create, in the law of attraction, what we focus on expands. Apologize when you freak out on them. Yeah. Apologize. It's okay to apologize to your kids. It's a really good thing to apologize to your kids when you freak out and you say things that are hurtful. I was upset. I was mad. I was triggered. Get them to understand the process, and you're going to do them way better than pretending like it never happened. Don't be sweeping stuff under the rug. That does not make for a good, wholesome relationship. Trust me. It doesn't. A lot of times that ends in estrangement. All right. just love one another, create peace in your heart, create peace within your own being, and you will create peace in your home. It's not that difficult. It's not easy, but it's not that difficult, because if you've got a strong foundation where you've got peace, where you meditate, where you're in touch with who you are, you're going to help your kids become in touch with who they are. And then your home's going to run a lot smoother. Sending you all love, sending you all peace. Really would love for this world to have strong family bonds and foundations that actually promote really good human beings. That's one of my main goals in life, is to help other people to create the peace, the love, the joy that I experience, so that we can live in a better world, so we can be happier, so we can be more passionate, so that we can create a life that we all love. All right, you guys, that's it for my show today. Love y'all. Peace.